Setting boundaries is crucial for the success of your business. We're going to tell you why.
Broadcasting from the Subaru of Gwinnett Studio at the Gas South Convention Center in Duluth, Georgia, it's time to design your life on Status Life with Leta. Status Life with Leta is presented by Derek Hayes Law at 404-777-HURT and by 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Invest in your health at 5strands.com.
We are back in the studio again today on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. We're here for Status Life with Leta. Welcome back, Leta. It's always wonderful to be here. But before we get into today's topic, I do want to catch up on a couple of things.
Okay.
One, we've discussed Kilimanjaro at length. It was wonderful. You gave an amazing podcast about that and the struggles that came after. But catch us up to speed as to what the latest is with your blood clot problems and all those health issues that came from that.
Okay. Well, I feel like in the last show, we just breezed through it. You know, I was dealing with it in the moment. Maybe the last 2 shows.
Yeah, it's been a
because it
couple of
was the
shows.
last March show, Mike, our producer, shaking his head, and April, and this is our May show. And so, you know, it's one of those things where I was real silent on social media. You just don't know how to address it. It's something that at any moment could have been life-threatening. And I really, for my own personal anxiety, for my children, you knew the seriousness of it.
Sure.
I can read worry all over your face, and I'm certain you haven't slept since March. Probably
There was one night.
probably just having one eye on me. But yeah, having blood clots, having deep vein thrombosis blood clots, and mine had gotten worse. They started as the SVT, where they call that superficial. So it's in a superficial vein that isn't life-threatening. And it got worse and moved into DVT, and they put me on blood thinners. I might have discussed all this, but at the same time, there is the risk at any given moment that one of those is going to break off and turn into a pulmonary embolism. And those are very scary and they're very life-threatening. And of course, we didn't want any of that to happen. I tried to lay low, tried to take it easy as much as possible. I've stopped exercising, you know, and it really made this year for me take a turn. And that's just going to be part of the journey. I had a hour-long phone call with one of my mentors even before the show today, and I said, you know, we did January 1st, I kicked off this 365-day deep dive that everything that was thrown my way, I'm going to say yes to. I'm going to have this great year of adventure. That's how I ended up in Africa. But what was thrown to me was some blood clots and some health problems.
That's called a curveball.
That's called a curveball.
Yep.
And so I'm not able to complete the running program that I was on, and I'm not able to complete, you know, certain try this challenge and try this, and I want to do the 75 hard, but when you're laid up, you can't do it. So it's going to be really interesting at the end of the year to see the culmination of 365 days and really look at it on a calendar and see everything that's transpired, because there was a lot that transpired even with me being laid up. It's so much different perspective on I can't drive my kids to appointments. I can't do this. I can't just get to the grocery store. I'm laid up. At one point, I was on crutches. And what does that look like? What does it look like to not have your health and
Sure.
the fear of all? I mean, it's just, I take everything as a lesson. I think that's why I have this podcast. You know, I get to absorb
To
all
teach.
this. Right. And I get to just share it all. And it's been really eye-opening. So the medical portion, I had a leg ablation on May 1st. And what that means is the main artery in my leg from
right
my
leg, starting
hip,
with
from my
that.
right leg, that's where all the clots were, is behind my knee and going down my calf. It was gross. It was all black and blue where the blood was pooling, and my foot was gross. I mean, it was gross. But it was all in there, and so they went in and they cauterized to close up that vein. This is a very common procedure, but they cauterized that vein about every 3 or 4 inches all the way down to my mid-calf. And in doing that, they closed. I didn't know this. I thought I thought clots were like little kidney stones, little balls,
Sure.
like little pebbles.
I think
thought
a lot of people,
clot
right.
was like you just get it out. That is not the case. A clot is like a straw. They showed me on. I've had multiple ultrasounds, but it's like almost the length and the diameter of a drinking straw that gets inside your veins. It's fascinating. I've learned so much about all this. And so they just close up all those veins. The blood thinners help. And this is also interesting because they want you to walk. This is not a procedure or a surgery where you have it and then you're laid up. You had to come in the room every hour
Yes.
on the hour for
And
12
wake you up
hours.
sometimes.
Because you've just come out of a procedure. And all your body wants to do is sleep. You're healing. I've had anesthesia. And then here comes Derek. It's like, he was setting an alarm and walking in and up. And then he'd hold my hands and we'd have just walking around the house. And then I'd go back down and here he comes.
It was kind of
another
the old
50
man
minutes
shuffle
later.
around the house.
It
for
was.
a
My
couple
leg
of
was all
days.
bandaged. Anyway, so that is all done. And I've started exercising again. I'm not running again, which if you follow me, is my passion. I just enjoy it. I enjoy being on a trail and I enjoy running with my friends. So I'm starting again. I'm starting to do long walks. I'm starting to do more than a 25-minute pace. And it feels good to move.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder a little
What?
bit because there are a couple of things.
Oh,
one
what'd I
was
say?
the surgery. The other
Okay.
was getting back to the exercise
Oh,
routine.
yeah.
But that's fine. You've already covered. I will say this, since we kind of covered that already. One of the hazards of living in the country and doing trail walks and trail runs.
Yep.
Our wonderful brand new addition to the family back Thanksgiving week, Cody.
Yeah.
He's now over 100 pounds. Our British lab. I'll let you tell what happened.
Oh, so one of the first nights, we live on acreage, and we live behind a gate, and there's 60 acres. We don't own 60, but between our neighbors, and we have all these cut trails, and it's a wonderful situation. And all of our families, we all use the trails. And this one particular night, I was going to take Cody. We've walked this trail 100 times. It leads. We have a barn in the back, and it goes out from the barn and around through the neighbors, their trails. And I'm just loving life. I've got my AirPods going, and my poor sweet Cody, he got struck 4 times on the foot by a snake, and I didn't see it. We didn't know till the next day. I
Snake
had
or
no
snakes.
idea.
It could have been a couple of
He
them,
could have
but-
found a nest, and I didn't hear him yelp. Nothing. He stays right by me. He could have been protecting me. I have no idea, but he's fine. It was non-venomous, but it did really hurt. His foot swelled up, and he wouldn't put pressure on it for a few days. But we got him to the vet in plenty of time. And anyway, so that is So now I'm solely pavement walking.
Yes.
It's just too hot. We're in Georgia. I don't know if you're listening to this from around the world, but Georgia in May and in June, it's getting hot, and the snakes are coming out.
Snakes are out. They're
Yeah.
all over the place. In fact, I've already seen a few. Well, let's get on to the podcast
Yes.
for today. We've talked about values. We've talked about priorities. We've talked about habits. What is it you want to talk about today?
So that was a series. That was a really important series. And I use all of these lessons that I've learned in business, really the things that worked for me and the things that didn't work. And the things that, as I move forward in my career with Status Life with Leta, as I move forward in my career as the Director of Marketing and Communications and Human Resources and COO for Derek Hayes Law.
There's a new title
I'm
every
just
week.
kidding. He jokes because I keep adding titles to my business card. These are the 2 hats I wear. So I love Status Life with Leta. This is where I get to take this journey of my life and take everything that works and everything that doesn't work and bottle it all up and be able to share it with you guys in a teaching platform. And something that's really been weighing on me, I've really been paying attention to, is boundaries. So I've done, speaking engagements, talking about values, talking about priorities. I was a guest on another podcast doing all this. But I think the boundaries is the action step that really ties all this together. So let's go back. You have your values. And
Sure.
we read all those 75 words a few shows ago. If we wrote mission statements with that, if you really, and I'm telling you, that podcast, and again, I did multiple speaking engagements based off that content, that is life-changing. Those 5 words for me, they are at the forefront of every decision I make. Like that has become my rock,
Sure.
truly.
And I've been with you when others that have either heard you speak about it, listened to the podcast, or somehow, some way connected to that message have talked about how it's affected them positively as well.
Thank you. I love that. Your values, that is to the core of yourself. Those 5 words should be at the forefront. And I've talked a lot about, I have my values. They haven't changed, but my priorities got completely out of whack. That's what threw my values to the back burner. So my value words, let's see, and these are in no particular order. I know, adventure, meaningful work, love, just things that to the core drive my soul, right? But my priorities became recognition, accolades, just all these other things in my career that were happening at the same time, but it overshadowed all of it, right? It's like...
Right. It wasn't founded on those principles of your values.
It really wasn't. And I can say that. I can say that honestly. And then we talk about habits. And again, that's an action step 2. And I've been really good lately about habit tracking. And I built a really neat habit tracker. I love that. That just keeps me accountable. I'm a very visual person, and so I like to see every day, okay, have I exercised? Have I read my book? Have I read, I like to spend time in prayer and meditation. Have I done that? I'm adamant about cleaning and decluttering and organizing, and we're going to talk about that when we get into boundaries a little bit. Have I done that? Just even if it's one drawer or one something per day. So that all goes into the habits. The boundaries are what protects your time. Boundaries are what, to me, it's what takes a bow and ties it on all those 3 important things that are going to really, truly propel you forward.
Sure.
So the little caveat to this that I want to discuss, what I want to go into today is career boundaries.
Okay.
I want to go into, if you're an entrepreneur, and let's say you're not the owner of the business, but you work for somebody else and you do not have great boundaries. So boundaries in a career corporate entrepreneur setting, because there is a ton of material and a ton of content that we could jump into to set personal boundaries.
Right. I was going to say that could be 5 or 6 podcasts alone, just about personal boundaries.
It could.
We all have them. We all need them.
Yeah. I've even had to set boundaries.
Sure.
Had to set boundaries, with family members at certain points. I've had to set boundaries with friends at certain points. All different things. I've even had to, at some point, set a boundary with my children just so I can get something done. So they, just stop pulling at me. Like, this is work time. I love you, but I have to have an hour. Whatever. Do you see what I mean? That's that's all a boundary.
Right. Right.
But today I want to talk about some examples, and I want to talk about a few things that had happened to me where I wasn't executing and I didn't have real specific boundaries up, and it really affected me negatively in my business.
So the question that comes to mind for me is, you as a small business owner, and you own several, what are your boundaries, your main boundaries as a small business owner? We'll go the business route as opposed to the personal route, like you said.
Yeah, yes, because there's 2 different lanes we could take this. I could sit down and try to tell you, I had this, and no, that's too much. Maybe that's another show. But I can genuinely talk about what's relative and what's going on in my life. And as Status Life with Leta builds, not just the podcast, but the blog and the Pinterest and, all the stuff that's out there, the content that's living on social media, I've had this great fear because I've already gone through business burnout. We've done many shows about it because it was very real. That's what I was saying. Mm-hmm. I can talk on this microphone and give all the best advice about what I'm feeling right here in the moment. And it's been pressing on me. Right. When I think of show topics, I write them, and I've probably written boundaries 3 or 4 times.
Well, I think I could immediately see how not setting boundaries could be a quicker path to that burnout.
That's been the fear for me,
well,
having already not had boundaries in place. So I want to answer your question, but before I do, I want to give the exact definition of boundaries.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So this is just Googled, right? And it says a line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line, and that's the real definition of this, right? Sure. You have to have the line between your personal space, your time, and your energy, and everyone else out there. So if it's a boss that's stealing all that from you, you have to set the boundaries, and we're going to go through that. So what are mine right now? Mine are definitely built around the time constraints. So what has weighed the most heavily on me having had multiple LLCs, multiple retail stores, a thriving interior design business, all of that, different managers for every single business, 70 vendors that rented space in my store.
70 personalities.
And some of those were times two, because
Right,
70 was per
exactly.
booth. But a lot of those people were in a partnership.
Husband and wife or friends.
Mother,
right.
daughter,
Yeah.
sisters, friends. So
Sure.
it was probably most booths had two. Only a few just had one.
Individuals, right.
Individuals. And so it's probably 140 different personalities, different needs, different questions, different wants. And when they are paying rent to be a part of your space, they do not want a boundary.
No,
they
of
do
course
not
not.
expect one. And that was very challenging, because when a vendor who's paying rent and a sale happens, if there's an error, if there's a transaction, if there's a discount, if they need to get in the store after hours, before, whatever it is, will you feature me on social media? I mean, 1,000 questions, then something goes missing. We had some theft. I mean, when you're in retail, there's a million different things that you are thinking about at all times. I'm thinking about these things not only for my merchandise, my staff, the general public, but also 140 vendors.
Right.
Go into this. There are certain, I'm not laughing, I'm just saying it's so monumental. There's codes, and as a trained interior designer, I've taken many classes on codes and law, and I know that if somebody walks into my store and there's not a 4-foot walkway, not inside the booth, but the walkways,
Right.
if you put something
main
and they can't
areas.
get to the bathroom, or it's too tight by the water fountain. So there's that. There's me constantly walking the store and making sure everything is safe, everything, for anyone.
Swept, liquids off the floor, any of those
Dirty.
kind of things.
Haven't even
Right,
talked about
exactly.
cleaning. Yeah, I'm just saying this is all in my business owner mind, but these are all conversations. These are all fires to put out. These are all things to had. So you want to talk about the lack of boundaries that I had with all of that, which was absolutely insane. And so as Status Life with Leta grows in the way that it's growing now, I'm very fearful that it is going to, I'm not going to have the right boundaries in place, and it's going to get to that level again.
Yeah.
I'm fearful
Well,
of that.
it can very easily. That's the thing. You've got to be conscious of the decisions and the steps, and this is what the podcast is all about.
Okay, so I went
help
on
address that.
Yes, so I went on a tangent explaining all of the things that were soaking up my energy and my time and putting out all these fires. That was to the detriment of my kids. And I've talked a lot about that on the Value Show, in saying that when I had that level of success, that level of recognition, that level of, financial abundance coming in, that level of just everything that was happening at that time. I was a single mom at that time also, and working, and everything was taking off. But I didn't have the boundaries in place that when I was with my children, that they had my undivided attention. And so right now, here and now, continuing with Status Life with Leta, continuing with the blog, just the direction that it's going to go, I'm very, very conscious that when I am home, and not just home, because I do work from home. I have a beautiful home office. I'm there a lot, especially now, it's summertime hitting. But when I'm home after hours, I think that's the biggest thing. When I'm on vacation, I used to take a mountain of work.
Yes, I know.
The guilt
And
that
I would
would be
drive, and you
there.
would sit in the passenger seat, and you would work the entire
And
way.
work
to-
and work. Even on an airplane, I would work and work and work.
yes, I know.
And I will say this teeny little caveat. I do feel like I'm extremely creative. Once you can get me out of my space, I feel like anywhere that I travel, the ideas flow.
Sure.
But there's a difference in bringing bills and bringing your huge to-do list and bringing a notebook. And again, I don't.
Doing payroll.
Right.
And, all
And
those
again,
things.
that's the
Right.
different boundary. Like, this amount of work doesn't need to touch my vacation. But if I'm, again, having such a good time and I'm relaxed and I'm looking at an ocean or climbing a mountain, all these things, they're very inspiring. And
Right.
so there's a different type of work that I can do. And that's very satisfying. So it's a little bit of a gray area, but yet not. For me, it can be black and white and say, no, I'm probably not going to do the books and work on accounting and handle payroll. And that all doesn't need to touch my vacation. Do I want to check my email once a day? Sure.
Right.
Why not? But if there's something very pressing, I'm not going to address it.
I recall that it was a vacation. You and I went to a winery up in North Georgia, and it was a Sunday, I believe, and they were closing relatively early, and we had a bottle of wine, and we sat at a table outside, and we started with a notepad and pen and spent, 3 hours, I guess it was. They had closed, and the guy said, y'all can sit out here as long as you want to. We were on a patio area, and
I
for
remember.
3
It's
hours or
amazing.
longer, we sat and rehashed basically the business model for you and
Sure.
the store and several other things, and mapped out a plan to come back and reorganize a lot. And it was, like you said, it was that moment of being away and spurring the creative thoughts and the approach to deal with that.
But I do think that it crosses the line to how much are you on? Are you really taking that much needed vacation, or do you still have one foot in the door? And that was the difference for me. I
Sure.
always had one foot in the door. And vacations were few and far between.
Yes, they
Because,
were.
I mean, it was very stressful and
Yeah.
very hard. And that even of itself was me lacking a boundary.
Right. Well, speaking of boundaries, let's talk about one of your sponsors.
Okay.
That is 5 Strands, the number 5 Strands Affordable Testing. It allows you to learn about food and sensitivities and set boundaries as to what you eat, when you eat it, all those kind of things based on how your body can process that. So a reminder that Status Life with Leta is sponsored by 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Gain personalized insights on how your body interacts with your diet and lifestyle patterns. All they need is 5 strands of hair, and you'll receive personalized results to help you reach your health and wellness goals. Visit 5strands.com to learn more. Again, that's the number 5strands.com. Also, too, the coupon code is LETA, LETA 10 for 10% off your order. So visit 5 Strands. Let's take this quick break, and we'll be back shortly.
Tired of experiencing bloating, eczema, diarrhea, or weight problems? Get to the root cause of your dietary discomforts with 5 Strands Affordable Testing. No need to schedule time off work. Just collect and send in 5 strands of your hair to see how intolerant your body is responding to over 600 common food items. Intolerance reactions are not life-threatening like allergies, but are responsible for most daily discomforts. Achieve your dietary and lifestyle goals by visiting 5strands.com and ordering your at-home collection kit today.
Hello, everyone. As a listener of the Status Life with Leta podcast, you already know I'm attorney Derek Hayes. I've been practicing law in the state of Georgia now for over 26 years. My firm specializes in cases involving personal injury, catastrophic injury, nursing home abuse, and any other situation where someone was injured by the negligence of others. As I've said before, if insurance companies ever resolve claims the way they should, I'd be out of a job. But I'm not worried about that happening. Did you know insurance adjusters are trained to pay you as little as possible to protect their company's bottom line? They say they're genuinely concerned about you, but really the goal is to settle the claim with you for far less money than you deserve. My job is to make sure they pay the full value of your claim and nothing less. You can speak directly with me by calling my office at 404-777-HURT. Visit my website at derekmhayes.com. or check out my social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to catch my podcast, Injury Insider with Derek Hayes, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcast. I look forward to speaking with you. Well, as we come back, we were talking about, of course, boundaries and setting those boundaries in the business and travel and all those things that we've already discussed. But really, one of the things that comes to mind for me is fear. We've done podcasts before about fear, but what's the fear of setting boundaries?
The fear is the people you're setting the boundaries the people you're setting the boundaries for, see, I had the wrong one.
That's all right.
They're going to be upset with you. There's
Sure.
going to be a tremendous amount of pushback. Depending on your business, you could lose business. If this is a business where you work for someone and you need to set boundaries with your boss that you're going to upset him or her, it comes with a lot of these negative emotions that people genuinely don't want to feel. There's
Right.
fear. Okay, so in this, the one little personal thing I'll say is, what if it's a family member? Think of that feeling.
Right.
What if you have a pushy mother-in-law? And it's like you have to set boundaries, and yet it comes with a lot of anxiety to do that. And my best advice, what I think is extremely crucial, is the sooner you set them, the better. So if you are a new entrepreneur and you're in that hustle and you've got this business and you've got this great idea and you're just work, or let's just say you're new to a career, right? And again, you're just in it, and there's nothing wrong with the hustle. There's nothing wrong with putting in long hours. There's nothing wrong with working hard and really trying to work yourself up a corporate ladder or your own entrepreneurial ladder. Those are great things. That's, kudos to your work
Yes.
ethic. But if you don't protect your time and your energy, especially in the beginning, it's much, much, much harder to do it later. And so I'm going to give you two examples. And one of the examples is directly related to me, and it's about not setting this soon enough. So 15 years ago, I met a wonderful, amazing girl. Her name is Alexa. You've met her. She
Yes,
did my hair for the
yes.
wedding. She is my hairstylist. And I always say she's a cute young version of me. She's now, I met her just out of school, out of cosmetology school, and she started doing my blonde hair. And she's a blonde, so blondes always do blondes the best, is my opinion.
Because they understand.
Yes, they know the tone. And anyway, so everywhere that Alexa has gone, and she's gone to a few salons because she's been working herself up her own personal entrepreneurial ladder. So she was working at a salon, and then she branched out and had her own little room in a salon, and I followed her there. And then she went on her own and had 3 rooms, and then she grew even more, and now she's bought an entire home, an old home, and restored it into a salon and aesthetics, like Botox
Which is
and facials,
terrific.
which is great. So
Yes.
see, I mean, I've just been with this whole journey, and when I sit in her chair, we talk business. And what I noticed from her is when she opened her salon, and she did confide this in me, I don't think she would mind me saying this, that she has 2 very young children, because again, she's 10 years younger than I am. And so she was, maintaining all her clients. That is her income. She was opening a brand new salon and renovating it, and she had 2 very small children at home. And I was just watching her work herself into that burnout mode. And you can always tell when someone's going there when they talk really, really fast. So if you're not just a fast talker, but there's a way that they're talking, I'm doing this,
And a
I'm doing
tone.
this, and
There's
I'm doing
also
this.
a tone to that.
They're not relaxed. There's no pause to anything. They're just bouncing from one thought to the next. They're bouncing from one activity to the next. I got to do this, I got to do that. I can see it. And because I've been through it and I was
It's
like
being
that,
stretched extremely thin.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And I just thought there's no way she can maintain this pace. And there's no boundary set. I can call Alexa at any time, day or night, change my appointment. She'll call all her clients, try to move everybody around. She's handling all this herself. She doesn't have an assistant. And everybody's got a direct link to her. She's even answering me on her day. I'll say, I'm sorry, it's Monday, and I know it's your day off, but, right?
Yes.
But everybody did that to me. And so here's what happened. So she gets an assistant, apprentice, I think they're called in the hairstylist world, and they're wonderful. And, I've met all these young girls, and now they're going to be even the younger Alexas coming up, right? But she set boundaries for her time and space and energy. And she told me after that salon opened, she just checked out for about a week. And I thought, just opening a brand new business, she said, I was exhausted. I was burnt out and I was exhausted. So she comes back from that, hires new staff, hires these apprentices, takes some workload off her, and sets these boundaries with her clients. Now, I've been with her for 15 years. We're tight, right? I'm not tight. We don't hang out, but I adore her.
Sure.
And she sets boundaries on me, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit, because now I'm texting her and I'm getting some, just blanket
Generic response. Right. As opposed to, hey, Leta, it's good to hear from you.
Should you have any appointment scheduling, please text this number. And I went, what? Where's Alexa? I didn't like it. So now I'm getting this generic response. And so it's like you have to text a whole different number. And when someone can get back to you, they will. Well, I'm laid up. I have to miss an appointment. I can't drive. I can't ask you to take a day off work to drive me to my hair appointment. You're a very busy attorney.
Yes.
And my blonde is not your concern, right? So I'm like, okay. She couldn't work me back in, which has never happened. So I felt very slighted. The number that I texted, no one ever responded. It's like I told you, I've been thinking about these boundaries, and I thought she just set boundaries, and I'm ready to go to another salon. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
Yes,
and
I
will say
understand.
this to her. I love her. I would say this with love. She's an avid listener of this show, so she's going to hear it and go, "Oh my God, Leta." Alexa, do not freak out. I love you. I see you next week. I'm not going to leave. But in that moment, she wasn't accommodating. She wasn't answering me. And she always had. And so that's the point. If you've been with someone, you've been with a client for 15 years, I don't think this is black and white. I don't think you can take those who are your bread and butter, those who have built your career, those who have followed you everywhere that you've been,
Right.
and put them in the same category as everybody coming in. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
I
Like,
no, I
I just
understand completely,
think
right.
that there has to be a gray area. I can't sit on this podcast and say, now, you need to protect your time and everybody gets cut off. Like, no, that's not really it. Now, if somebody is trying to reach me in a marketing capacity and it's after hours, no, they're going to the next time of day that I'm on the clock and I'm going to respond to them. But if my mentor calls me at night and she's got a brainstorming idea and we need to talk, she's got my time and attention.
Sure. I think about, you're talking about her experience and Alexa, but just go back in time to when you opened Status, the initial vendors you had. And when you did close the doors, there were still some vendors that had been with you since day one.
Yes.
Those vendors that had been with you since day one, I'm sure without a doubt, had your cell phone number and would text you or call you at any hour of the day or night. And even when new vendors came in, you would give them a number to reach out to you. But it's almost like you feel there's some sort of allegiance to them, like you talked about with Alexa, because they helped you build your business, just like you in turn helped Alexa build her business.
Absolutely.
So that's why you may, on a personal, and I don't want to get in personal boundaries, but on a personal level, you've got to balance the personal boundaries with the business boundaries. You've got a personal relationship with that person, but yet you also have a business relationship with that person. And that's that fine line that you walk between the personal boundaries and the business boundaries.
And you just said the perfect word.
Oh, I did?
I'm going to pull it out. You said balance. And that is all that this is. That balance, we've done a show about it. If you read, there's so much balance is unattainable. You'll do it right one day. You won't do it right one day. Set all this in place and you're going to have the perfect balance. Well, that's all that we want, right? That's
Sure.
I can't say that's what a mom wants, but I do want that. I want to have the perfect balance with being there enough for my kids and raising them and knowing that this time is going so fast. And yet I really want to have my position at the law firm. And I really want to build Status Life with Leta as a teaching and, this amazing platform where I get to help people in the masses. I don't want to just be a life coach. I don't necessarily want to go that route and do one-on-one coaching. I want to do something that uses my gift of communication and uses my gift of vulnerability and really lets people in. So that's my little spiel about what I want, and yet looking at this very specifically and saying every single person does not fit in the same box. And maybe it's on paper. I told you I'm very visual. If I was working and I had all those vendors, maybe I would look and say, okay, I don't know this one. This one can only contact the store. They start feeding to my managers. But these that have been with me since day one, these are my people. Like, these people are
Sure.
near and
They
dear
believed
to me.
in you.
Of course they did. And not that everybody doesn't, but when you start setting boundaries, it has to be gradual, and you don't need to push everyone aside. The second little story that I wanted to tell, and this happened at almost the exact same time that Alexa had put a boundary on me. And again, she didn't know she did. She didn't realize how it was affecting me on the other side of her protecting her energy and her time. She has little children. I respect that. I respect the boundary. I didn't like it, but I respect it.
Sure.
But I didn't leave her, like I said. There is a social media, she's a public speaker. I don't exactly know her title. Jen, Gottlieb. Gottlieb. I'm sorry, Jen, if I'm saying that incorrectly, but I do follow her. She does a lot of the personal development, and I love that. I like her story. I like the way she speaks. I don't follow many. You know me, I'm not a huge person.
No, you're not.
I don't like to follow other people because I like to walk my own path.
Exactly.
I do it
No,
with
I
everything.
100% agree.
Talked that a
Yes.
million times. So
Yes.
I'm not a huge even when I was getting into the business and thinking about content creation, and I was working with a coach, and he was like, so who do you follow? And I had nothing. I was like, I don't follow anybody. He was like, well, follow some people and let's see what you like and what you don't like. Okay. Back to Jen
Gottlieb.
At the exact same time, I was trying to reach Alexa, and the boundary was up for me. She did a little post on her social media, and it was her. I believe there were two gentlemen in the photo, and it caught my eye because she wrote, I'm going to paraphrase, I don't know how it was worded, but she wrote, when I left New York, I thought I would never see these guys again. I think she lives in LA now, and yet the way they have treated her, every time she calls, they answer. If she happens to be in town, they work her in. She flies to New York I'm sure she flies there for business. She stayed with her hairstylist in New York City when she lives across the country because of the way they made her feel. They did not put up a boundary. I'm certain that if I was to call as the general public and try to work with these guys, I would get whoever answers the phone at the salon,
scheduling person.
right?
Right.
And they would be a year out to be able to do my blonde hair. But they valued her. She had been with them since the beginning of her career, the beginning of living in New York as a young girl, on the up and up. And they probably built their careers together, but they didn't put a boundary up against her. And now she's huge. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, that's it right there. It's got to be gray. This is not black and white.
There's not a perfect answer for every situation.
No.
Yeah, and I what comes to mind to me is the phrase, you can't be everything to everyone all the time.
Okay.
And that's also, too, about setting boundaries. You hear about the yes man in a business, whether it's a man or a woman. Oh, yes, boss, you're right. Oh, yes, I'll do that. Oh, yes. The glad-handing person, oh, that's perfect. And no matter what, they never push back. That person, quite frankly, whether it's a man or a woman in the business, has not necessarily set boundaries. Is that analysis along with what you were talking about on some level?
Absolutely. That's definitely, when you said that, in my mind, I thought that's where I was in the beginning.
Being everything to everyone
100%.
all the time.
I think I was probably there the whole time as the boss, as the leader. I'm doing my hands in quotes and whatever, the owner, that it just got so big. And because I didn't have the right boundaries, going back, what would I have changed? You asked what I've changed now, and is the time and the protection of my time with my children, my time taking them to their sports, activities, vacations. I mean, I'm just cherishing that 100%. And I've scaled back my career. I may go back into it full force in a couple of years. My son is going into his sophomore year, so I've only got 3 more years with him under our roof. So what my career looks like right now might not be what it looks like in 3 years. It's time. It's fleeting. We only have so much. And I have this horrible mommy guilt about how much time went into my career when they were little. And that's amazing because it spiraled in a good way. It spiraled into another store. It spiraled into expanding my current store. It spiraled into this podcast. It spiraled into this magazines and all these accolades I was getting and winning and a part of. It's like it just went to this big, huge place. And yet, because these boundaries weren't set, because I was just saying yes, then I went into burnout and it all came crashing down.
All right. So I do want to sum this up a lot because we're coming close to the time we have to end this. We did the podcast on values, priorities, and habits, those 3 individual podcasts. As we wrap up today about boundaries, give us some tips, if you want to call it that, as to how to set boundaries at work without jeopardizing your career. Again, we're staying in the business setting for boundaries.
This is a biggie. And I told you I had a call this morning, and it's just interesting for me how it all really flows together. I was on the phone with one of my mentors, and she was hammering me on this, and she said, what is your end game? And so we talked a lot about that. Like we're talking about Status Life with Leta and kind of summing all that up. And that's not the conversation that I want to have right here. But what's coming to mind is she said to me, what is your end game? And so I answered that question. Okay, what are your priorities? Because your priorities have to be in alignment before you can get to the end game, right? You
Sure.
can know what that end game is going to look like.
But you've got to maintain the priority.
I want XYZ. I want, because everybody's career is different. So is it followers? Is it helping people? Is it financial? Whatever all that is for you, answer that question to yourself. What is your end game? Everybody take a second, and the first thing that comes to mind is your answer. Okay, now you got to back it up. So now you have to define your priorities. Before you set those priorities, I almost want to point everybody back to that podcast where we did all the work. Right? I mean, I've dug into all this and how to set it. So define your priorities. Now we have to build our boundaries around that. Okay? So it's like you go from the end and work backwards on all this. So what are my priorities? My priorities are I want to cook healthy meals for my family. I want all of us eating healthy, amazing, hopefully some organic foods. I want all of us exercising. I want my family thriving. I want time with all of us because time is fleeting. So I'm saying these things as the forefront. That's all going to take me away from hours at work, right? There's
Sure.
food prep. There's exercising. There's running everyone to the gym, whatever that is, kids' sports. And so my boundaries become, okay, set the boundary. What are my work hours going to look like? And they don't have to be the same every day. If you do work a 9 to 5, they do. Mm-hmm. But then are you shutting your phone off at night? Are you able to say to your boss or your coworkers or whoever it is, I am now off. You cannot reach me. My mentor, Amy, she's been on the show before, Amy Whipple. I even told her I was going to bring this up today. If I text her at 6 o'clock at night, she absolutely will not respond. I cannot reach Amy.
Yeah, you've told me about
she
this.
set her boundaries before she ever did her first mastermind. Mm-hmm. She set her boundaries from day one. Her family is first and foremost, and that's my value. My family is one of my 5 value words. Mm-hmm. So then I worked backwards, and I said, okay, so if my day ends at 4 or 5 or whatever time I have to pick the first kid up from school, it doesn't look the same every single day, but that day we're done. Now I'm busy. Now I'm exercising. I'm taking care of the dog. I'm running kids to sports, and I'm grocery shopping. So I hope that defines it in a way to say, okay, what's your end game at work? What are your values? Now set your priorities. Now you have to build your boundaries around all of that. Okay. Another one is going to be to communicate. This is the hard part, and this is really crucial. Do they have to be communicated? Because that Alexa didn't communicate hers with me. She just sent me a generic message that she copy and pasted on her phone
The
and go
boundaries
here.
were dropped on you.
Some may, and every situation is going to be different. This is black and white, but yet again, all of this sits in a lot of gray, which is interesting too. So sometimes they need to be communicated. If you're an owner and an entrepreneur and you have managers, you absolutely have to communicate your time boundaries to your managers. You will not be able to reach me after X amount of time. You will not be able to reach me on this vacation. I've hired you, and I'm trusting you to do this job. And then sometimes maybe they don't. Sometimes if it's a step beyond just your managers and whatever that looks like for an employee, or maybe people are trying to get you in a sales capacity, and you don't have to communicate that. They can get an out of office response for you. Sure. So it all looks different. And I would be mindful of that. I would be mindful of my Alexa story and that Jen Gottlieb story. Who do you need to communicate it to, and who do you not, and who do you not need to have a boundary with?
Right.
And who do you? again, this is not this. I'd like to come on here with these I like a to-do list, but
But
what
you
I'm
can't.
you
It's not
can't
with the- no.
not with this. This
Everyone
is,
has its own
the word
individual
boundary has
boundary.
way more gray, but yet they're so important,
Sure.
right? And then you absolutely, Derek, you need to hear this one. You have to practice saying no. You have to.
I heard about that.
You're not good at it.
Yes. See, I just said yes. There we go.
Oh, gosh. You're not. Derek is not great at saying no. And Derek? I'm just kidding. No, it came, I mean, it's hard with you. And we talked about this before the show a little bit. I said, boundaries, Derek, setting them. Like, what does that look like for you?
It's tough because I made the comment earlier. You want to be everything for everyone all the time. And I always see myself in a position where I can help, and I feel like I need to help when I can. And sometimes my desire and my ability to help, whatever it may be, whatever the situation is, overrides my need to set that boundary to my detriment.
Yeah.
Which means that I take myself away from other things that I need to do for the purpose of helping someone else with whatever they need to do. So it's making yourself a priority over somebody else.
I hope you would say, because my goal is to help you be aware of too many yeses, help you really have more balance and say, no, what do you want? You have a voice in this. Don't just do what we want. What do you want to do? Does that make sense?
Yes, of course it does.
Just drawing it out and saying, and it's not just I want to go eat Mexican, not Asian, or, that kind of thing, but really, truly where the boundaries are
I will
set.
go back to my foundation. I grew up a preacher's son in South Alabama, in the Panhandle of Florida. And in those times in the Methodist Church, the parsonage was typically next door to the church. So if somebody came to the church for an issue and it was after hours, well, they just walked across the parking lot and knocked on the door of the parsonage. And so the learned behavior was you're available any time of day, any time of night. And I can't tell you how many times in my experiences as a kid, someone within the church would come to the parsonage at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock at night on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Tuesday or whatever it may be, because there was some issue. Now, it could be something tragic where somebody was in a horrible accident and something happened to them, or it could be just the need to have a shoulder to cry on or talk to. So the learned behavior was that, yes, I too feel like I need to be there at times to be everything I can for everyone all the time.
And what I just heard out of that is your father had no boundaries. He was
it's a career thing.
I know. I get it.
That's the career.
I get it.
That's the lifestyle you
I wasn't
choose
saying that as a negative.
as you're called
Right.
to into the ministry.
I mean, we're not pastors, and I don't really, besides our pastor, I don't know anyone, but I don't feel like that's the case anymore.
It's not. There's a lot that's changed. I mean, there's committees now and prayer teams and all those things that people will go to within the small church. But if you get into the more traditional towns and congregations, you're still probably going to see that. The parsonage system, for the most part, is not a thing anymore. Now pastors in the Methodist Church are actually given a housing allowance. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but when you're going to serve the next church and the house is directly across the parking lot, it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
We weren't several miles away. A couple of locations we were, but for the most part, we were within walking distance, if not directly across the parking lot.
Yeah.
So,
well, I want to wrap up by saying I set my goals. I looked at my values. I made sure my values were in alignment with my priorities. We've done all this work on the shows. My call to action for everyone listening would be to go back and listen to those shows and do this work. It is coming out of me walking through this journey, right? It's been very eye-opening to pay attention to all this, to research all this, to really understand, everything that I did right and everything that I did wrong. I don't think that making yourself available, like I said, and growing a business and hustling, that's all a wonderful thing. But what I didn't do was set boundaries in the beginning, and then it was too late.
your expertise is an experience. What you've gone through and what you've learned from those experiences has given you that expertise to talk about those habits, those values, those priorities, and now, of course, those boundaries.
That's it. Boundaries wraps it all up in a bow.
Correct.
So during the day, I'm available. At night, you can't reach me. And I've had to set that because I would be cooking dinner and taking calls. And I would, we talked every month that we had the Status Super Saturday. My kids would just be sitting around the store bored, and I just won't do that to them anymore. I will be very conscious of the decisions I make in my career to not affect my family and the time that we spend, specifically the quality time.
Yes. Going back to our Sunday dinners.
We have Sunday dinners. Yeah.
That's it.
We've implemented a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, we have. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us on Status Life with Leta, presented by Business RadioX, Derek Hayes Law, and 5 Strands Affordable Testing. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and Leta's Instagram, Status Life with Leta, so you don't miss any upcoming shows. This program and all the other shows are available in your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, for Leta Brooks Hayes, I'm Derek Hayes, and you are listening to Status Life with Leta on Business Radio X.